prevention usually goes to 12 o'clock, and then we get to treatment, recovery on the other side of the clock. And early intervention is on both sides, right? Continuum of care 101. Preventionists usually don't want to get into the early intervention space, but many are involved in it. And I think COVID, there's always a silver lining to horrible things, sadly. But I think because there's been such an issue among young people and those across the lifespan due to COVID, that preventionists have gotten much more involved in that early intervention, some screening and referral to care when needed, because of depression, because of anxiety, more people drinking. The Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services has been getting more and more into early intervention. And that's, an area for us to be when it comes to gambling services. So hopefully you're familiar with what Ohio's gambling prevalence is, but short and sweet, 10.3% of Ohio adults are at some level of risk for problem gambling. One out of every 10. That's a lot of people. And yet, we'll learn a little bit more shortly. But it's also important to note, and I was thinking of it when Brianne spoke this morning and said 6% of the population, I think she used the term at-risk gamblers, and it's always a little hard to parse, what are folks considering an at-risk gambler, what are folks considering someone with a gambling diagnosis, and we ended up with low risk, moderate risk, and problem. These, first, you want to be concerned about anyone in that 10%, but that is, they only scored 1 or 2 what's the criteria. Thank you. So they're starting to move into some risky behaviors. So they may be okay, or they may progress through addictive disease. These folks, tell me that 5 or 6?
4.
Okay, 4. So you definitely want to be concerned about those individuals. Those individuals certainly could benefit from some education. And then when we look at this number, so I'll just call it 1%, those are the individuals that will probably be diagnosable. And Brianne's thing said 6%, so I don't know who all is in her bucket as far as which study that was. Even that 1% was 77,000 Ohioans, and a lot of things are coming that are going to change those numbers. And we do have a new survey being done in 2022 over this next calendar year. So we'll have it, my goal is to have it wrapped up so that it can be a break point between pre-sports gambling and post-sports gambling. We do the surveys every 5 years. Some of the markers that we use in order to look at where we are as a state, the calls to the problem gambling helpline. They just went up a little over the last year, 4% to 6,300, but that's a lot of calls to the problem gambling helpline. And now under 200 or so are being taken then from that warm transfer clinician perspective, because those folks, they call the helpline and the call specialist will say, if they think it would be helpful, would you like to talk to a trained gambling specialist? They don't scare them away yet by saying counselor. And so somewhere between 150 and 200 folks so far have agreed to that service. But it starts that relationship, and that's an effective step. That's an early intervention. Chats and texts we've only had chats and texts in Ohio for 2 years. So the fact that they jumped 36% over the last year, is hugely significant. And we also know, when we look at the ages of who's using chat and text, I mean, who are they, age-wise?
18 to 24, the younger crowd.
Yeah, and even younger, getting teenagers starting to call. And then one of the things that we do every year is an annual report for Ohio's problem gambling services. It's under that Ohio for Responsible Gambling umbrella. But the work is, it's the clinical and prevention work primarily at Ohio MHAS. And over the past year, even with COVID, we had 61,000 individuals screened and a little over 1,000 treated. Again, those numbers aren't bad, especially knowing that some agencies may have been closed part of that time. Some of those services may have been telehealth. So things are there. It was COVID, what can you say? So I'm going to show you a few of these, and if I beat a dead horse, that's because I wanted to beat that dead horse. Don't be offended. That's an old aphorism. This is a mid-year and annual report that we ask all of the provider agencies to submit to us. So these are your agencies. They take the problem gambling funds through the ATOM boards and then use those for your problem gambling services. And then at the end of the year for us is end of July, please send us your numbers. The department doesn't have a better system for gathering this at this point. And this is a very, very common report that we receive. This one is showing almost 4,000 people screened and only 3 people were identified and received some treatment. So think about the numbers from a few slides ago that said 1 out of every 100. 1 out of every 100 who are diagnosable with gambling disorder. Should have done the math and put a big thing on there with a marker, but it's horrendous. I get too depressed when I see that math. And behavioral health conditions, addictive disorders have always been woefully underserved. That's not news to anyone. But we have to do better with these numbers because every one of them is a person who has a family, who is starting to lose control. And that is, it's going to destroy the person, the family, the community. They're going to lose their job, and on and on. You'll notice Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation helped sponsor this conference because every month, every 6 months or so, we get those calls. We hear about someone who's taken their lives because of this issue. I said I was going to beat you over the head with it. 3,000 people, 1 identified. This one screened about 2,000 people, and 600 of those were youth. That's awesome. I'd love to see that. 11 identified, and only 1 was converted to treatment. Have to do better. Motivational interviewing. The clinical side. Please learn what you can to make this happen. And then, it's much better. It's dramatically better to have 12 identified out of 974, to have 124 identified out of 1,600. And also, this is an important number, as I just mentioned, that they get screened for suicide risk. Callers to the helpline always get screened for suicide risk unless they hang up too fast. it's 21% of people who died by suicide say that gambling was the cause. It's the second biggest reason after serious depression why anybody takes their lives. And, you know, sometimes I feel that we're shouting from the bottom of the well and it's not being heard. Advocacy, advocacy. But start with your own agencies. Start with your colleagues. So, other reasons why it's so more important. I mean, yes, the gambling all by itself is incredibly destructive for someone who isn't making those safe choices. 7 times more likely to be involved with substances, nicotine, alcohol. I'm from Belmont County. I always think of the data. This was the 2017 survey. In Belmont, Harrison, and Monroe counties, I see Michelle back there, 55% of 18 to 24-year-old males are gambling while intoxicated. I mean, that was there. It didn't say while using alcohol. It said they're drunk and they're gambling to excess. And they were the at-risk problem gambler males. And they're so young. Extremely concerning. The next few bullets are related to a study. Some of you may have heard of John Grant. He's spoken for our conference here in Ohio. And he did this study that showed 76% suffering from depression, 16 to 40 that. Lifetime anxiety, lifetime prevalence of bipolar, and 20% had symptoms, lifetime prevalence of ADHD. So, you know, we know Ohioans and anybody, anywhere across the country, across the world, they don't end up in one of the behavioral health agencies very often for gambling. But is it part of their package? Is it part of what we must address so that they can leave, you know, healthy? What's in recovery mean? We can't just look at a part of that person and expect the rest of it to fall away, to get fixed on its own. A few stats about suicide. And it's great that OSPF sponsors this conference, but I wish it didn't make as much sense as it does. So, let me go back to that one. You know, just a closing remark, I'm sure I'm going to pop up once in a while with my colleagues here. But if you think about this, think about being that advocate. We want to screen people, the before you bet, take the quiz, I mentioned it this morning. We want people to kind of have that light turned on inside their heads. Oh, I took this quiz, I got an 8. What's going on with that? That's, you know, I mean, laugh it off, sure, that's fine. But it should plant that seed. Maybe I have a problem. According to this, I have a problem. That's the most painless thing. And we have RAC cards out there that have the quiz questions on them. You know, I mean, I'm a mother of 3, and 1 young adult son definitely gambles, you know, here and there. And what I've always done with my kids is leave a condom on their dresser. Or, you know, whatever, to keep them safe. And I've definitely left him a few little messages related to responsible gambling. I think he's fine. But we need to do that within our own circles, and then certainly within our workplace, and just start to build that awareness, because we are a voice at the bottom of the well, and we need to make sure, you know, climb the walls first and help people hear us. So with that, it should be a piece of the whole continuum throughout prevention, up to that early intervention, and then get those folks screened the right way, which is Megan's focus. Because if they're not screened the right way, we get 3,000 people screened, and one identified. It is pitiful. And I hope you don't take this in any, just take it like it is. That's all I can say. All right. Any questions at this point? Okay. I will pass it on to Amanda.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about prevention's role and this idea of screening. But just because I'm talking about prevention's role doesn't mean it's not relevant for treatment, because we all need to work together in order to improve these numbers and improve our outcomes. So the information is what I do, but definitely anyone, wherever you are within the field, whatever your role is, you still can play a part in making all of these numbers better and making sure we're getting people who do need services access to those services. Okay, so my first kind of thing is Stacy had introduced talking about our state data, and that comes from our 2016-2017 statewide survey that was conducted. And like she said, the 2022 is coming out, which is going to be great. We're going to have new data, and we're going to be able to make better decisions going forward. One thing that I can say from a preventionist standpoint is that most often the work that you do, it takes you have so much that you have to do. So many of us don't have our role as full-time working in problem gambling prevention. I work part-time, and part of my part-time job is problem gambling prevention. The rest that I do is AOD. So within that, I think it can feel kind of daunting at times to figure out, well, how can I figure out, or how can I add into this another task of mine, including helping to get access or helping to increase screening within your agency or for the people that you work with. So one thing that I can suggest that we've done, because my hours are very limited, is looking into the data to be able to direct yourself to save time, to make sure that you're targeting the individuals that you know need to be targeted. It's such an easy way to make sure that you're using that little bit of time and energy that you have to get where you need to be. So this is just kind of an example of some of our data that we got, and this came from the state survey. So we looked at, these are all of our kind of problem areas. And so I used this data in order to develop a strategic plan to look at who we're going to work with, how we're going to market, and that ultimately is kind of how we started to set up our plan going forward. So you can see kind of some of our at-risk groups. Adults ages 25 to 44 had our highest rates or were at risk or problem gamblers. And then also adults ages 18 to 24. So this is for our county specifically. Every county is going to be different, and most counties will have access to state data. If they don't have access to specific countywide data, access to tri-county data or an Adams board data. So that's definitely something that you can seek out. It's available not just for prevention, but also for treatment or anyone else. The other couple things we saw here were that 44% of those individuals who are identified as at-risk gamblers, they had serious depression. They identified themselves as having serious depression. And we had almost 40% that were under the care of a doctor for some stress-related condition. So with this, we can kind of see already, how can prevention play a role in gaining access to these individuals who need screened for problem gambling? So that's kind of how we set up our strategy from the prevention side going forward. Here's just kind of a look at Portage County a little bit more specifically. The state didn't rank county by county. This is what I did. So there was never intention from OMAS to rank counties to kind of make us look like one's better than the other. So just to kind of make that clear, this is something that I looked at and put it together for our county to be able to help not only guide myself, but also to get buy-in from those individuals that need to be involved in order to make it possible for us to actually screen and access those people that we need to. So our total at-risk groups, we're a pretty small county. We're not very big. How many people do we have in our county? I have no idea. 100 and some thousand people. So we're across a wide spread. We have a lot of rural area. So we're spread across a wide range, but we're pretty small overall. We're 8th in the state for total problem gamblers. AOD use while gambling 7th. But really always stands out to me, depression and problem gamblers were second within the state, and we have a lot of services that are available, but we're not reaching them. And then our other group, at risk, problem gambling and women, 3rd in the state. We this whole time have been just targeting males because that's what we thought was the group that was most at risk. But within our particular county, it's actually women. And then also our individuals who are unemployed. So by looking at the data, we were able to target and figure out, okay, where should we invest this energy? And that helped direct a lot of the activities that I do as a part-time preventionist. When we think about looking at this idea of the continuum of care, which Stacy introduced initially, you can kind of see how prevention has a specific space. We also have promotion that can fall under us as well. When we get to that indicated or case identification section, that's kind of where we talk about that overlap. That idea that screening is both prevention as well as treatment's role. So we have that right at that end there. To stay within our scope of practice, we have to keep that in mind. Screening is not treating. And if we use the appropriate tools, the screening tools are not diagnosing, they're letting someone know about their risk level. So thinking about that can help us figure out what can we do as preventionists in order to make sure we're staying within our scope of practice, but we're also getting those individuals who a lot of times get lost in that gap, the intervention gap. That's what we're trying to fill by including prevention in this whole conversation. So kind of going back to it, again, looking at this idea of early intervention. So when you think about interventions, it occurs after there's kind of some sort of risk factor that's occurred. Usually it's a serious risk factor. If we think back to the continuum of care, that falls into that indicated group. Right? That's our last effort, our last stage. The idea is to halt it or slow it, and in some cases, we can ultimately get in there and stop what's occurring before it happens, as long as we're providing the appropriate services. So early intervention is end of scope practice for preventionists. End of scope practice for us can include screening and referring to treatment. So what are some ways that we've tried to do this within our community, within our agency? I'll say Town 2 is the only agency within our county that does anything related to problem gambling work. We have one treatment provider currently who is able to provide services, and he's here today, and I'm super fortunate to have him on the team. When he came in, he helped me my life so much easier, and I have to tell you, having the right people on the team is so crucial. Having someone who is willing to stand up with you to say, hey, we need to do this, is amazing. So find those people within your agency that will work with you. And I'm blessed to have Bill by my side on the treatment side to work with me to make sure that we're getting this done. And we're always growing and improving. And so just want to say thank you.
Back at you.
Outward.
It's good to have her on my team.
So I force him to do a lot of things. I won't deny that. So some things to think about, ways that we can actually, as preventionists, that we can actually go ahead and start increasing our screening numbers and making sure that we're getting access to people, is by making sure that we're involved in those community events where those people that we need to find and seek out that are at risk will be attending. So a lot of the events that I pick specifically to invest my time in, are events where I know those individuals will be. So individuals who may be unemployed, or some of those other groups, where women are likely to attend. So I target those groups. I go to those events. So that's kind of one way to think about it. But screening in the community is a different challenge than screening in an agency. So what you do in your agency is so much easier actually than within the community. So I wanted to kind of give you a few little tips on how to kind of think about that idea, so that hopefully it will not be so daunting. One of the big concerns is that when you're in the community, there is literally no leverage, or there's minimal leverage. Your leverage is lessened in the community because within an agency, you can almost require someone to complete a screening. You can make it a part of any kind of work that you do within your agency. So there's a little bit more leverage there. In the community, you're basically begging people to say, hey, you could be at risk. Can you please complete this for me? So your leverage is a little bit different in that means. So finding the right way to do it is going to be unique to your communities and to the events that you do choose to attend. The other thing is that within the community, screening has a whole different purpose. It's really focused on increasing awareness that, hey, this is an issue, and also disseminating information. It's different than within the agency. Within agencies, we're working to intervene or we're working to treat. So the purpose is different. What screening within community events can do, though, is that it provides this opportunity to help move individuals who've never thought about their gambling behavior before to at least thinking about it. And if we can get them screened, then we're going to be able to connect that to their personal gambling practices that they may have never had an opportunity to do before. If we stick our screening practices to just an agency, we're only getting to those people who have an identified problem, whether it's with drugs or mental health or something else. So this opens up the gamut of individuals that we can be screening. The other thing is, well, what tools do we use if we're in the community and we're screening? So one thing that I can say is the shorter the screen is, the more likely someone is going to be willing to complete it. Now, it's not possible for every agency, but sometimes if there's some type of incentive that you can attach to it, that's going to help someone be more likely to participate. Whether it be a t-shirt or a pencil or anything, people are just more likely to come to you. Community events, do you go to a community event and go to a table that just has papers all over it? No, you're like, oh, stressful, I'm going to go there. Candy, I'm going to go there. So there's always kind of something to draw someone into you. So in thinking about that, think about how do we get people attracted to us, first of all? And then secondarily, how can we be respectful of their time in a way that's going to give them information that's going to help them down the line? So the two tools that we've chosen to use are BBGS, which is a brief biosocial gambling screen. It's only 3 questions. They can score it themselves. It's just, if you mark yes on one of them, then that is cause for you to consider looking into this further. And Before You Bet is the 9-question survey. And so that's my preference because it asks a few more questions. It asks it in a little bit more detail. So those are the 2 that we use when we're in the community. We don't ever use anything like SODs or anything that's intended to be diagnostic because that is not prevention's role. Prevention's role in the community is not to diagnose. Prevention's role is to raise awareness and disseminate information. So that we choose not to use that in the community. In our agency, that's a different story. So those 2 are really good. One thing to mention with this is that because the BBGS is so short and it says gambling practices, keeping in mind that if you do intend to do this in the community, there needs to be a way to introduce individuals to what those gambling activities might be. You'll hear probably multiple times throughout the conference, but when you go and you say, do you have an issue with gambling? People will say, oh no. But then they actually have all these activities that they do that are gambling activities that they themselves didn't define as such. So when we're asking about the idea of gambling and will you screen for gambling, we need to make sure that we connect them to that term gambling. Okay. The other thing with this is if you're screening within the community, well then there are going to be some people that probably do identify as being at risk, or you might even find someone who could identify as a problem gambler. You have to have follow-up information for those screens that are being done. And how we do it when we're doing screening events is the information is based on score. So the higher the score goes, the more information that's provided. So that way individuals have access to the services. We always give out information about Before You Bet to everyone. We give out our agency-wide information, and then the further up we get, we're including our counselor's number. We're including our helpline information. So if it gets higher up, that means that they're at greater risk, and so we want to make sure they have access to the appropriate information to be able to go forward if they choose to. And so that can include letting them know that this idea of getting them to treatment, or to at least be fully assessed. And so that comes to Stacy. You're going to talk about SBIRT,
Oh,
which
sure.
is a different kind of referral strategy idea.
You heard a little bit about it this morning. We have the Gambling Expert Project right now. With the Ohio Association of Community Health Centers. Those are the FQHCs. Everybody knows what an FQHC is? Or did I hear a no? Okay, so they're community health centers, and they get lots and lots of federal money in order to serve underserved communities. So they are low economic levels. They are a lot of immigrant populations. Who said that? Indigenous, yes, thank you. And there are, oh gosh, I don't know this, 50-ish in the state of Ohio. And 4 of them are going to work with us on screening and brief intervention and referral for treatment for physical health care population, which is fantastic. When we first started all of this work, and formed the Problem Gambling Advisory Board that we have on behalf of the state, it was one of those main priorities we developed in our strategic plan, integration of physical and behavioral health. Well, way easier said than done, but we've made these little progressive steps along the way. And now Lottery Commission and Casino Control Commission both pitched in so that we could have a research study done to hopefully prove that Gambling Expert will work with the physical health care population. It has been done in a few other states, although they have not been physical health care clients, and they haven't been an FQHC, this community health center population. So I'm really excited about it, very excited to see what comes out of that. So that is a simple screen that Amanda described. That brief intervention would be, it could be the information that's on a business card. It could be a little rack card. Here's something you might want to take home. Think about it later. It could be something more detailed. And then at the far end of that is referral to treatment. Well, I'm based on your responses here, you might want to talk to someone trained in gambling treatment, in gambling disorder treatment. Here's the number of an organization that helps in that area. So it's that early intervention service. It could be prevention through actual clinical care. Everybody with us on that? Okay.
Good. The one thing I did forget to mention was that we took all of the state data and used that and planning strategically, and we created a logic model. And if anyone wants to see the logic model or wants access to it, I can send it to you, so just email me. But we use that logic model, actually, we give that to a mental health board who provides us our gambling dollars. And so it shows our whole plan, what we're doing, where our priority areas are, what our needs are. And so it helps us plan out a little bit more clearly what we're doing. So does anyone use a logic model? Yeah, I have a weird love for logic models. So definitely consider that when you're thinking about this idea of screening practices. Consider, can you create a logic model to help get yourselves organized with just your screening practices? That can be one of those things that helps a little bit. We've done it just kind of for our overall prevention activities. Okay. So another way that we can kind of increase this idea of screening, specifically in the community, is with unique collaborations. And so I've been pretty fortunate to be able to get into some places, to working with some of our local colleges, with student organizations as well at those colleges. Also, I'm a trainer for the Ohio Child Welfare Training Program, and so I intentionally went through everything you needed to do to become a trainer so that I could offer problem gambling training. And within that, what I do is I teach the foster care workers and the administrators how to use the screens. And it's been really helpful in that they're using it in order to, well, hopefully they will be, they at least are thinking about using it in order to screen the birth parents that are involved in foster care. They also have talked about foster parents, and then we looked at the idea of branching that out into actually screening some of the foster youth, especially those who are aging out of the system, because they're at great risk. So there's kind of a unique way to get into that. And then also our work release program within our county. This has been kind of on hold with COVID, but what I was able to do was to get them to include the 3 BBGS questions on their AOD screen when they go to the work release program. And so we have an agreement that if they score on the BBGS, that they'll call us, because we do treatment for problem gambling. And so that was all initiated from prevention side to get screening going, but we included that work release program, the contact, as the person who's referring. So it's a really cool thing that hopefully if anyone is at risk within that, we'll be able to catch them and get them the opportunity to have treatment.
I also just talked to our probation department about possibly getting some screening with probationers.
That would be good. The foster care system, and Amanda mentioned young people aging out. We got a call pre-COVID a few years ago asking if you could support the Department of Job and Family Services because they have this big fair for those kids who are transitioning out of care. And we said, well, in what capacity, what are we talking about here? And they said, well, the company that's setting up this whole thing is going to be at the Columbus Convention Center, and part of the town, the kids they're going to walk through a town, experience life in this town, and get money to spend, and it's supposed to last them a week. And there's a casino in it. Well, that's a horrible idea. I mean, most of them would not even have been legally allowed to be in a casino because they're mostly 18 to 21-year-olds. But it was already going to happen. So Scott Anderson, who works with me, went, and so many of the kids, I mean, he just hung back and let them do what they wanted to do. And a lot of them went to the casino. A lot of them lost all their money. The week's worth of food, money, and all that, because they thought, well, I don't need to live this week on $150. I can live this week on whatever, all the winnings I'm going to get at the casino. So then he would take them one-to-one and have a conversation. But it's an important audience.
Yeah, definitely. That's just a strategy that I was able to use. I'm a foster parent, so it was easy for me to be able to get in to do that. Not necessarily for everyone, but it's a group that we definitely fits a lot of those at-risk criteria, especially within our county. So those are kind of some interesting collaborations. What we're working on right now is actually with parent-teacher organizations. They'll offer trainings for parents, and we're trying to get a training focusing on actually gaming, and within that, obviously we're going to include gambling. They have an interest in that. If we can do it gaming first, gambling second, we're having greater success in that way. The other thing is also we're offering teacher in services, and so this is going to start in March. And the teacher in services, we're going to provide them, it's going to be a CEU, so they're going to be able to get credits for participating. And it will focus on a number of different issues. So gaming, gambling, and we may throw in a couple of others that are relevant within it, but those are the two key things. So we're focusing on trying to get that. So that's prevention, and within that, we'll be able to work in the idea of how do we recognize signs, and that's going to help us with that referral side of things. Okay, so then some things that we've done, some specific examples with the idea of screening in the community. I just wanted to I was able to work with our local college, Neomed, Northeast Ohio Regional Medical Center, and we just completed, well, it's going on for, it's a month and a half long. It's a self-paced online training that the students, they're studying to be doctors, can complete. And if they complete it and they finish the evaluation of the training, then they actually will get a $10 gift card, an Amazon e-gift card. And we use the Nearpod platform. And within this platform, one of the parts of the things that they do is actually complete the Before You Bet self-assessment. So they're able to gauge their own risk for that. What we did was, I'll work on it. Okay. What we did was we had to, in order to kind of keep track of how many people were doing it, we created a special link, and within link, depending on their scores, it gives them access to information. With every single score, it directs them back to Before You Bet. And then the higher the scores go, we provide them more information along the way. So if they don't have any risk, we ask them to check out Before You Bet and look at those low-risk gambling strategies. If they have a score, then we direct them to the helpline and go forward from there. So everyone who completes it will go through that actual screen, and they'll be able to take direction from the information that's there and choose to go forward if they'd like. Okay, so what this all kind of does is it's this idea of bringing everyone to the table and working with community screening and then our in-house screening, which I didn't even mention. What we do with that is every client who comes through our agency completes the SOGS, an adapted SOGS screen. Those actually all get put in my box in our agency, and I score them. And then from there, those who have a score, it gets sent out to all of our team. It gets sent out to our clinical director, to our CFO, to my supervisor with prevention. It also gets sent out to Bill, our treatment provider. And from there, Bill takes it and he talks to the counselors that are assigned those individual clients. So that's kind of how we are doing it currently within house. And then this is how we've been trying to increase our screening numbers within the community. So this whole screening process idea, especially in-house, has been a great way for us to work more collaboratively with administration and also with treatment. And it's been a really great opportunity because Bill is so on board with this. So the treatment side being really accepting of screening is so helpful. So if you are a treatment, definitely really consider this idea of participating in screening. What things that we have conversations about is which screen to use, and each agency is different. There's a number of screens to use. How and when to screen, so how are we gonna do it? Our main screening right now, which isn't the best option, but is the best option for us in the moment, is to make it part of their intake assessment. They do it self-paced, they complete it on their own, and then I score it. It's not the best option. Scoring it or asking about problem gambling later on in the treatment process is better, but that's when we have the most access, and so that's what we have to kind of do right now. So starting somewhere is better than not doing it at all. Then we look at who's going to be involved, and that includes prevention, that includes treatment, that also includes our financial person, and includes other administration members. And where we're currently at right now is actually this idea of how do we get them from screen to treatment. We're contacting the counselors, well, Bill is, through treatment, he's contacting the counselors and saying, hey, there was a score. But like everyone else, it's difficult to transfer to treatment. So this is an area that we're really focused on trying to improve. And the other thing to consider is a specific protocol to implement. So saying we're gonna screen is great, but it really has to be laid out so that everyone knows what their actual role is and everyone participates within their scope of practice. If everyone works more collaboratively, then it makes it a lot easier. And having prevention and treatment and administration all on board with understanding the importance of screening to make sure that those clients aren't getting missed, and also that we're having a greater impact within the community as a whole, then we're going to have more success, obviously, at the state level as well. And those numbers can definitely improve from there.
Okay, well, welcome back. Nothing more terrifying than having your boss be the moderator for your presentation. He came up to me and said, you're going to do great, just don't screw it up. So that's what I'm going to aim to do today, is just do great and not screw it up. But I am a counselor at Zeph Center in the Gambling Treatment Program. Currently, we have about 40 to 45 active clients in our program at any time. I've been there since September of 2018, so I very much still consider myself a newbie in this field. I haven't been in this field for decades, but man, I feel like I've learned a decade's worth of information by coming to these conferences and getting involved. And since I've started, I've actually seen over 300 individuals with a gambling disorder. So they're out there, and
What a number.
and it's pretty easy to spot them. It's pretty easy to get them into counseling if you're willing to take the energy and the investment to get them there. Some people will fall into your lap and say, I'm a problem gambler, I need help. Others will come into treatment at Zeph Center, go to detox, see one of Steve-Rye's groups, and walk out saying, I'm a gambler. You know, I have a drug addiction, but I need help with this too. And others, you might just develop a relationship with them over the course of just getting to know them throughout their own treatment. And they might decide a few months down the road, okay, maybe I could use some help with this gambling or other behavior too. So what I'm aiming to accomplish with you guys is giving you real strategies to use as a counselor, as a preventionist. I love that Amanda said, even though I'm kind of talking from the prevention aspect, this applies to treatment too. The same goes for me. Even though I'm talking from a treatment perspective, everything I'm going to show you is education. And everyone in this room is capable of delivering that education to people. And so don't shy away from these strategies. If you feel like, oh, that's cool, I want to try that, just try it. Or come up with your own. But just stay curious about our populations that are at risk. Invest in them, get to know their stories, get to know where they're coming from. They say put yourself in their shoes, and then you'll understand. So I have a few treatment screening strategies that I've developed through my time at Zeph Center that Steve has been using that I've said, that's a good idea, I'm going to start doing that too. Develop relationships with the therapists, psychiatrists, and other providers within your agency, especially intake. Research indicates a dropout rate of over 50% among disorder gamblers, which means you might get to see them once and never see them again. You might see them for 5 minutes, and that's the only time you're going to see them. And that happens with our intakes as well. We have people come in for an intake for gambling disorder, and they don't come back, sometimes ever, or sometimes right away. And so time is precious with this population because of the high dropout rate. So developing relationships with your agency or wherever you work or wherever you live, okay? I work at a huge agency, so it's pretty easy for me to develop those connections. But if you're at a smaller agency or you feel like you have smaller connections, branch out. Are there any local universities by you or community colleges? Are there any recovery houses or sober living environments? Those are the things that you want to be looking for in your community and saying, I wonder if I could develop a connection there. I wonder if I could meet somebody and say, maybe we could collaborate on this, help each other out. If you like to teach, increase your agency's overall competency by offering free trainings. I like free trainings, especially if they come with free CEUs. This is something that I did in February. I did a training for our mental health counselors at Zeph Center, kind of like, Bill, what you shared with your agency. And then I did a whole separate training for our intake staff. And it was about raising that awareness. It wasn't about pressuring anybody to become competent in gambling disorder, because if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But behavioral addictions are coming whether we like it or not. And we can't keep avoiding them like the plague. They're coming. We need to be able to have the conversation with our clients and not shy away from them when they come in through intake or when they bring it up in counseling. Or if we see them scratching a ticket off in a substance use group. I heard through the tree branches that, some people at a recovery house picked up a deck of cards. not to play Uno, to play poker. And we know that not everyone gambles is going to develop this gambling addiction, but we know who's at risk. And that was concerning to me to hear that that was going on at a sober living house and that people that I work with were gambling or approving it or saying, yeah, that sounds fun, let me get in on it. Sometimes we don't realize the impact of our actions or our words, and we don't know how we're affecting other people. And I think gambling really falls under that. You know, if no one would have alcohol at a sober living facility. They do. I mean, people bring it in, people bring drugs in, but there's consequences with that. Yet I frequently run into people having decks of cards on residential units and detox recovery houses. You know, even agencies having bingo or gambling related things. We need to be mindful of our impact and what we're promoting and what we're not promoting. You can also reach out to local universities and offer your expertise to teach a class. Teachers are always looking for someone to be a guest speaker because it means they get a day off. Reach out. Hey, I reach out to the University of Toledo and I say, hey, if there's any classes about substance use or counseling, you know, I work at Zeph Center and I would love to come in and talk about behavioral addictions in your class. Because I know when I went to school, it was just a chapter in a book that we were told to read. I don't know if it was like that for any of you guys, but it was a chapter in a book in the syllabus. It said it, but we didn't actually talk about it. I didn't know gambling disorder was a thing until I was on Indeed.com looking for jobs. And it said gambling treatment counselor, and I thought, okay, I need a job. Let's see if I get it. And here I am. Here I am.
Silly you.
It was a gamble, though, wasn't it?
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
That's actually how I got my job too. Actually, I was like, I'm substance abuse, so this will be great, and that's where it fit in. I did AOD specialization, so that happens.
Yeah.
With the universities and contacting, I teach full time at Kent, and what I'm gonna say is you might have better luck if you do it prior to a semester beginning or the end of a semester, because then it gets worked into the course syllabus, and then that makes it a little bit easier for scheduling, so they might not be as hesitant because we have content we have to cover over the course of the semester, and this is good information. So if you can get it worked into the actual structure of the course versus coming in halfway in the semester and saying, hey, can I come in here and talk, you might need less resistance in that way.
And I found that once you are established, once you teach one class, they start talking. And they say, if you're looking for someone to teach your class, you could reach out to so-and-so, or you could reach out to her, or hey, I know Amanda, maybe she can do it. Everyone networks, not just us. And so once you get in, you can stay in.
Yeah, and sometimes if you're fortunate, it'll get your name or the presentation will get built into the actual syllabus, and it's a federal regulation, we have to share our syllabi. And so then the next person who comes to get that syllabus, well, then they see you and then they may continue it on. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, so the more planned you are with that aspect of it, the more likely you are to be a continual part of the course, not just a single time.
And I don't want anyone in here to think, oh, I couldn't do that. Because you could, if you wanted to. We're all at a problem gambling conference. We all know how to do this. We know how to talk about it. And I'm not saying, go book a presentation tomorrow, but you're here doing the work. Spread the word. Bill?
If you ever run a group, you can teach a class.
Yeah. If you've ever run a group. Yeah, absolutely. So some other strategies, or maybe some things to check on. Do a little compliance check. Are there brief screens in your agency's intake? Yes or no? If not, could you add a brief gambling screen, like the BBGS, or 1 or 2 questions about gambling or other behavioral addictions? Like I said, they're coming whether we like it or not. Behavioral addictions are coming, they've been here, and they're going to keep coming. If we don't take it seriously, how can we expect our clients to? Can you provide awareness to staff on SOGS screenings or other screens? Amanda was talking about other screens. Zeph Center uses the South Oaks gambling screen, which you got a copy of. Can you educate your staff on it? Can you do a lunch and learn and offer a free CEU just to show them what a South Oaks gambling screen is? And say, you know, if this ever comes up and you think your client may have a gambling problem, you can give them the screen and then you can just let me know. I'll handle the referral, or we can get connected. Are there ways that you can provide more awareness, more disseminating information? Because the more people that know are the more people that can be working towards that collective goal of continuing to screen. March is Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Convenient, it's coming right up. Can you do something? Can you offer free screens to your clients in the waiting rooms? Can you go to your recovery houses and set up a table or a booth and just spread information? Can you go into any mental health or substance use groups and talk about behavioral addictions or gambling addiction? And can you continue to offer psychoeducation to your current clients and to the current people that you work with? Sometimes I think I forget about that. We sometimes get so focused on continuing to gather more people and get more awareness that we forget about the people that we're already working with and making sure that our current clients are still receiving the newest education, the newest information, the newest treatment. And never underestimate the power of freebies, you guys. If you're anything like me, I was a one-track mind to go to that little pre-conference area and collect every stress ball that I could, because I like to put them in a little basket and then my clients can pick them out. Freebies, everyone loves freebies. If you have a table with free stuff, people are gonna come to it naturally. Candy's great too, right? Never underestimate the power of freebies. I always tell people, my whole college wardrobe was just free t-shirts to clubs I didn't belong in because they were just set up like in the dining hall and they're like, you want a free shirt? I'm like, yeah, size medium. And I was not in any of the clubs, but they were giving out free shirts. So of course I'm gonna seize the opportunity. Now, how do we have the conversation with clients? How do we have the conversation with the at-risk populations, with the clients already in treatment? Well, simply, they don't really care what you know unless they know that you care. Doesn't matter how smart you are. If they don't think that you care about them, they don't care what you have to say. And I've learned that the hard way. Being 4 years into my career, there's been a learning curve of working with certain populations of they really don't care what you know unless they know that you're invested in their story, in their recovery, in their improvement. So, I got you like halfway through this presentation without having to participate. And that has to end now, unfortunately. Because I'm gonna take you back to 3rd grade, 4th grade. I don't remember what grade they taught Venn diagrams, but this is a Venn diagram that I've done with clients and gambling groups, that I've done with clients in substance use or mental health groups, that I have done with professionals like all of you, and that I've done in the presentations with the mental health counselors and the intake. So, when we look at this Venn diagram, the goal is to gather as much information as we can. And I always say there's really not a super wrong answer. This is what you think and what you know of, let's just say, substance use disorder and gambling addiction. What is unique about them individually, and what do they have in common? And so if this was a whiteboard, I'd write your answers in. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts? What are some things that substance use disorder that are unique to that disorder? What are things that are unique to a gambling addiction? And what do they have in common?
Alcohol and drug addiction can be deadly.
Do you think that gambling addiction can be deadly?
Suicide.
So that could go in the middle. So suicide in the middle.
Right.
Thank you.
In common, chasing the high.
Chasing. Yep, chasing the high.
Liver disorder for alcohol.
Liver disorder for alcohol. Okay. What
Money
else?
issues.
What was that?
Money issues on both sides.
In the middle? Yep, money issues.
I can share something that I learned actually at this conference years ago that someone said was that with the cessation of gambling, there's actually a loss of hope, where when you stop using drugs, there's actually hope that can come from it. Because gambling itself is a way to get yourself out, and with drugs you go further down, and so if you stop, you come up. So someone at the conference taught me that, and that made total sense to me, and I'm prevention, but that I actually share that often, and
Yeah.
it helps other people understand a little bit.
So that would be something that are unique to them. What else?
Gambling won't show up in your analysis.
Yeah. You know what? This is probably a really bad thing that I do, but I'm going to tell you anyways. I go into these groups and I do this, and they say that. They say, well, it's not going to show up on a urinalysis. And I go, you didn't see the latest news. They found a particle in your pee that can determine if you've been gambling. They can find it. It's in scratch-off dust. Somehow it makes it into the body.
Serious.
And I get that reaction, and then you can tell who's been gambling, right? Because they go, no, no, you're lying. And I lead them on for a little bit, and I go, no, you're right, of course. It's not going to show up in a urinalysis. I'm not going to take a Q-tip and take into your fingernails. Let me see if you got anything under there. I'm not going to ask you to empty your pockets to see if you have any poker chips or scratch-off tickets, otherwise known as cardboard crack, in your pocket. So you're right, it won't show up on a urinalysis, which means it's that much easier to hide, too. What else? Yeah, tell me.
The cardboard crack is the pull tabs.
Oh, well, that's not what my clients say.
No, there's no.
They say
for it.
anything that's paper, anything in that type of form, I'll let them know, though.
Please do.
I'll let them know that they are actually misinformed.
No, don't do that.
I like a little conflict in my groups. What else? What's unique and what do they have in common?
There's more treatment options for SUV.
Absolutely. Way more treatment options. Is there really any kind of detox for a gambling addiction? Not really. What else?
Is there less stigma surrounding gambling addiction than
Yeah.
alcohol use?
Gambling is socially acceptable. Everybody's doing it. There's a lot more stigma associated with illegal drug use.
They both have
Go ahead.
both have a unique subculture with their own language and jargon and things like that.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one before, but you're right.
You see commercials for both during Super Bowl.
Yeah. So they're both advertised.
Gambling and less Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can, and your, what is it, 50% of people in treatment for SUDs have a gambling disorder.
Yeah, so the
That's something
co-occurring. Yeah. At Zeph Center, we identify about 1 in 5 screened in a substance use group will score 5 or higher on the SOG screen, which would indicate a likely gambling problem. What else? What else do you guys think? What else goes in the middle? What else do they have in common?
Mental health.
Mental health. Yeah.
You use your friends and family to obtain funds to do both.
Yep. Yep.
They both ultimately disease the family unit.
Yep. Absolutely. Broken relationships,
They can both impact jobs,
cause
job issues.
I think they can both lead to crime
Mhm.
and legal issues,
Gambling's got a higher suicide rate.
higher suicide rate. Yep.
Especially with some kind of drugs, like cocaine, there's a lot of similarities, the same cortical regions in the brain when they're actively using or when they're in action.
Yeah, so similar parts of the brain are lighting up even when you're ingesting something into your body versus seeing and participating in an activity, but not actually ingesting anything. Anything else you guys can think of? Okay, I'll show you my master list, which actually does not have everything that you guys shared, so I have to, well, you're recording it, so I'll add to it after. But this is the master list I have, and the master list that I'm about to show you is purely from clients. It's not from any professionals. This is from several groups I've done, all what the clients think. Now you can see there's a lot on there, and I'm not going to read it all to you because it's in your PowerPoint, but they thought a lot of the same things you did. In addition to what you guys said, they noticed that there's an MAT, a medicated assisted treatment option for alcohol and drugs. They noticed that it may be covered by most insurances. Now, they also didn't know that gambling treatment is free in the state of Ohio, but these were the things that my clients were even noticing. I did this group yesterday. I do gambling groups on Wednesdays. And I did it, and I said, I need you guys to be really serious because I'm talking about this tomorrow. And someone said, I feel like I have to prove to people that I have a gambling problem. And that just hurt my soul when my client said that. He said, I can walk in and tell you I have a drug problem, and they just believe me based off of how I look, and just the fact that you probably wouldn't say it unless you did. And he said, I feel like I actually have to prove to people that my gambling is a problem. And I think that's what we're talking about here, is we need to be able to hear that from our clients and say, I hear you. Let's talk about it. Because if we're not taking it seriously, they're not going to. And if they try and speak up and we dismiss that, what kind of message is that sending? I could not believe that he said that, and it hurt, right? How would you feel if he said, hey, I have this problem, and someone was like, Amanda, no, come on, it's just gambling, right? And this is the power of our words and our actions, and starting to take gambling disorder and behavioral addictions, behavioral problems a little bit more seriously when they're brought up. Not just gambling. Relationships, food, sugar, sex, rage, video games. That gets brought up all the time in my counseling sessions. And when you think about what most people are stressed about, they might fall into one of those categories. Money, relationships, right? We need to be able to continue having that conversation. Any questions so far? This is a really fun activity if you get to do it with professionals or with clients. It's just fun to do. And the last thing I do with this in group is I say, okay, usually it's on a whiteboard. I say, okay, so you're in here and you're getting sober and you're not getting high and you're not drinking. And for all intents and purposes, gambling addiction could say any other ailment or behavioral addiction. But let's just say you get sober, that's cool. So we can erase this whole section. We can erase everything here. But if they have a gambling addiction or some other mental health disorder, they're going to keep all of this and they're going to keep what's in the middle. So if we're just encouraging our clients to stay sober or to work on their depression or anxiety without talking about all of it, none of this is going to go away. None of these negative consequences are going to go away permanently. We have to treat them as the entire human being that they are, not just for what we're comfortable talking about. It's got to be everything.
I think that's a great point, and one of the reasons why the conversion to screening is so important, why screening and conversion is so important, because you still have a huge list, even if you're treating the main reason that they came in initially. So I think that's a great way to kind of sum up that need that's there.
Another thing that I talk about in some groups with professionals and with clients that Stacy touched on, the prevalence rates of other mental health disorders like depression, anxiety, substance use, ADHD, trauma. Bring this up, and if you can draw, try and recreate it yourself, and erase all this, and ask your clients, how does gambling relate to ADHD? See what they have to say. How does gambling relate to depression, anxiety, your substance use, your trauma, bipolar disorder? Because if you're working with a client population, they're going to have a substance use or mental health diagnosis. And they'll be able to pinpoint what fits for them and say, well, my anxiety was affected this way by gambling. And they might even say, that's how I dealt with it. It was a way for me to feel less anxious for a little while, or for me to feel a little less depressed in the beginning. We meet a lot of people that come in for substance use and then realize, oh no, that's why I keep relapsing. I get sober, but I don't quit gambling. I heard a story of someone who had 5 years clean and sober from cocaine and just would play scratch-off tickets every now and then. And one day he hit big and he relapsed within the week. Because the last time he had that much money, what was he doing? Cocaine, right? So bring this up and say, how does this relate to you? Does it? Does it not? With our counselors, with our preventionists, ask them the same question. How does it relate? Why is it important to work with these populations with gambling disorder? I don't know, right? Let's try it. Let's see if we get anywhere. Uh-oh, wrong button. And just to kind of retouch on this, just the prevalence rates. I don't need to read through these for you guys. You know them. They're clear as day. But these are additional populations that we should be making sure are getting screened for gambling disorder. And not just, this is not what I mean. Hey, can you fill this out? And just give it back to me when you're done. Because, I wouldn't fill that out, honestly, if someone did that to me. I'd fill it out as quickly as possible and move on with my day. Have the conversation before you give somebody the screen. And say, this is why I'm giving you this screen. And if this relates to you in any way, or any of this inspired you or made sense to you, then just take a few extra moments to actually fill out the screen. Steve?
Thanks. I always ask our SUD clients one question. I always say, these are the people that score over 5 in the studies. I say, if you never do another drug again, if you stay clean for the rest of your life and you continue to gamble, will you ever have financial security? And if the answer is no, then say, then is there more that we need to work on? Because what's the point of going through all of that treatment, making all that effort, if you're only, does it matter what chops your legs off from underneath you? Or does it only matter that your legs are chopped off?
Thanks. Stacy, I think this is my horse that I'm beating.
Okay. Poor horses.
Behavioral addictions are here. They're here. They've been here. We know this. Don't shy away from the conversation. You're all in this room, so I know you know how to have the conversation. Or I know you know who knows how to have the conversation. We've got to start recognizing that this is something we're going to have to deal with, whether we like it or not. Not just gambling. Every other behavioral addiction you can think of. Okay, so we're doing pretty good on timing. We've got some time to do the sample SOGs. I passed out a sample South Oaks gambling screen for you guys. Can I have a show of hands if you have ever administered or scored a SOG screen? Give me your hands up high. Oh, okay, cool. So this will be good. I was worried everyone was gonna be like, duh, and then I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was gonna make it up on the fly. So this is just one screening tool that you can use, and there are other brief ones, yes. But when it comes to screening to treatment, whenever someone gets to treatment, they're probably going to be doing these at some point, or doing something that's a little bit longer than a brief screen. And so whether your role as a preventionist is to focus more on the brief screening, or your role as a counselor or in administration giving maybe a longer screen, it's important to know every tool that's being used kind of in your area. So I printed these off. We don't have a color printer, so I highlighted these. So hopefully I highlighted them all right. You'll see that there's 20 questions, and if the number is highlighted in green, it is a scoreable question, which means you could get a point depending on how you score. If something is highlighted in yellow, that would indicate you give them a point. The highest you can score is a 20, and we'll be interpreting this sample score together. Now, there's no right or wrong. This is all just interpretation. So if you've never done this before, don't shy away from it. Just kind of see what you think. So, as you can see, the first page of this has no green or yellow highlights on it, other than the top corner here, which I just put in, which means nothing on this front page is scoreable. This is all information gathering. What kind of gambling does this person like to do? Can someone tell me what kind of gambling this person likes to do the most?
Casino.
Went to-
Sport.
Yeah. Bill, you want to say?
Sports camp.
Yep. So this client bets on sports once a week or more. Letter E, went to casinos, legal or otherwise, once a week or more. What are the last two that this person marks once a week or more?
Sports related again.
Just games of skill.
Yep. Slot machines, poker machines, or other gambling machines. And then bowling, shooting pool, playing golf, or some other game of skill for money. So if you ever administer this, sometimes people get really caught up on this first page and they say, well, yeah, I mean, I've gone to the casino like 5 times. There's not an option for that. And I say, don't think too hard about the first page. It says not at all, less than once a week or more. If you've ever been to Cold Stone Creamery, you either like it, love it, or gotta have it. Okay? So look at it that way. Don't overthink it. Think about maybe how you guys might answer these too. It's a great way to learn this tool is by taking it yourself. And number 2 is not a scoreable question either. It's just gathering information. What is the largest amount of money you have ever gambled with on any one day? Can someone tell me what this person marked?
100,000.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big range. I mean, $1,000 is a lot of money to me. And so is $100. That's a lot of Chipotle bowls that I could have gotten. So this first page, you don't need to do anything with other than interpret their answers. Gather the information. Go ahead and flip to the next page. And you'll see that we have another, number 3, non-scoreable question. We're still just gathering information. Which of the following people in your life has or had a gambling problem? People get caught up on this too. Well, what if I don't know? What if I think? Don't overthink it. What feels right to you? If you think your dad had a gambling problem, go ahead and check it. If you think a friend or someone important in your life had or has a gambling problem, go ahead and check it. We're trying to see if there's family, friends, important people around this person that also gamble to the point that this person thinks they even have a problem with it. As we know, many individuals with a gambling addiction learned from someone like a family member or someone important in their life how to gamble. And it was part of family interactions. It was part of life for them. And so we're curious what they think and what insight they have on themselves and their family history. So here's where we get to the scoreable questions, and you're gonna wanna give yourself 1 point if they checked in a yellow highlighted box. So as you can see, number 4, when you gamble, how often do you go back another day to win back money you have lost? This person just said some of the time, which is not an answer that would get them a point. But it's still really important to know that some of the time they've done it, which is interesting. You might ask, tell me about a time when you did that. What happened? Who were you with? Do you have a story? They usually have a story. Number 5, have you ever claimed to be winning money gambling but weren't really? In fact, you were losing? Yes, less than half the time I lost. You can see that is a yellow highlighted answer. So they've gained 1 point on this screen so far. Everybody with me? Okay. Number 6, do you feel you've ever had a problem with betting or money gambling? They said no. That's also very interesting. Gathering information. That's not an answer that would give them a point. If they said yes or yes in the past but not now, they'd get a point. So as you can see, are you catching the gist of this? So I want you to go through the rest of this SOG screen. And I want you to practice and tally up what you think this person's score would be. And I'm going to give you a few moments to do it. Yes, 10, you're correct. So, I also gave you a scoring sheet. This is all accessible on Google too, so if you lose it, you can Google it. So now I want to take just the remaining of our time before we open up for questions. I've got a few more slides. I want to see what you guys think. If you look at this sheet, towards the bottom, interpreting the score, they scored 5 or more. And all that really tells you is that they have a probable pathological gambler. Say that 10 times quick. What does that mean? What does scoring a 10 on a South Oaks gambling screen mean other than a probable pathological gambler? So one last thing I wanted to share with you guys, and thank you for your participation, is this is how I like to check out of all my gambling groups that I do. It's just for today. I'm not asking you to leave this room and go reinvent the wheel. I'm not asking you to take on a huge project and change things overnight. But I'm asking you to walk out of the door today and say, what am I going to do just for today to be 1% better? I'm not a mathematician, but throughout history, apparently, repetitive small improvements are the foundations of great achievements. And if we improve 1% each day, when compounded over the year, 3,800% better each year. Whereas if we get 1% worse each day compounded, we lose 97% of our value each year. And so every group that I do, I ask people to check out before they walk out of the door or end their Zoom group, what are you going to do just for today? Just to be 1% better. Because we can handle 1%. I'm not asking you to go be 100% better and change everything that you've ever done and what you know. Change 1%. What are you going to do today to be 1% better? Just for today. And then you get to wake up tomorrow and decide just for tomorrow. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.